Welcome, Bridge Builders, to the next episode of Latter-day Bridge Builders. I'm your host, Mitch. Grateful to be with you all today. Today's episode, I wanted to talk a little bit about some personal experiences I've had in the last few years of bridge building with members of the church. And I'm thinking about 4 people specifically that have taken the time to sit down with me to listen to my story. I listen to theirs, and we just have a conversation about things. And just kind of wanted to share some of the themes I've seen between these 4 conversations and what has been the best, and how hopefully you, the listener, can take these into your own relationships with those who are on the other side of the aisle, so to speak, from you. So we'll get into that in just a minute. Before we get started, I just wanted to remind you all that we're here at the Utah Podcast Studio in West Jordan. If you have a podcast idea and you need some help getting things set up and you want to record with high quality audio and video, check them out. It's a great space, super comfortable. They've got free drinks for you and multiple different sets and locations, or spots to shoot from. So you can have solo like me, you can have 4 or 5 guests kind of thing. It's really cool. So check them out. All right. So let's get started. A couple other things. Sorry, really quick. Make sure you follow us on YouTube. Now that I'm here recording and I've got higher quality audio, video, better backdrop, everything like that, these are going to be on YouTube, and that's going to where I'm spend most of my space or most of my time. I hope that's where we can have conversations with comments, kind of going back and forth, so forth. I really like YouTube as a medium for conversations, and I listen to a lot of my podcasts there, so I'd recommend you do the same if you're interested, and you can kind of see my face, get to quote unquote know me a little bit. Yeah, and then also just a reminder, I'm looking still for another co-host. If that's something you're interested in, send me an email, ldsbridgebuilders@gmail.com. If you have episode ideas, send an email. If you just have feedback in general, send it there. Other things, just kind of housekeeping, looking for some financial sponsors, whether that's a brand deal. I'd love to kind of land something with that. So if you're interested or know someone who might be, have them email me. Also, I've got if you just are a listener and you want to contribute a few bucks, I'd really appreciate it. I've got a buy me a coffee link where you can set up a donation, a one-time donation. I think you can do a monthly donation as well if that's something you're just interested in. And I would really appreciate that. I'm looking into ways that monthly donors could get some certain perks and stuff. So as the podcast moves forward and gets bigger. And then leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, your listening platform if you're doing audio only. This just helps the algorithms build these and kind of get the word out there a little bit more. And, grassroots level, just share it with your friends and family if you think this is something that would help. Yeah, I just love to see it. So if you're new to the show, I did a couple episodes ago, I talked about a little bit about my journey in the last couple of years. I'm officially no longer a member of the church. In a lot of ways, I'm agnostic about things, but atheist as well, in the sense that I don't believe that there's a personal God, but I'm also not... I don't know that there's a personal God. That's what the agnostic means, right? So, I'm interested, what the audience, how they fall on the belief spectrum. Maybe I'll put a poll out there in a little bit just to kind of see where people are at, believers, non-believers, somewhere in between, so forth. Maybe there's listeners out there who don't even have ties to Mormonism, and I think that'd be really cool. I hope that this podcast can kind of spark conversations between people in other ways, because we're so divisive in a lot of different ways, like I've talked about. So anyways, but kind of going back to how I started, there's four people that I've talked to in the past couple years who have really helped me see that this is bridge building is not just like this theoretical thing we can talk about and like, oh yeah, that would be cool, but like these are actual conversations that have happened with me. Some of them with these people are multiple conversations, and I've just really appreciated them. I'm not going to name names just because I don't have their permission to necessarily, but maybe if they're listening, they'll know who they are. I will actually, one person I will mention because she was a former guest. Her name's Stevie. She was a friend of mine from high school. She joined the church when she was 19, I want to say 20, somewhere in there. I think she's like episode 6 or 7 of the earlier ones, somewhere in there. Look for Stevie's conversion story. Maybe episode 9, actually, now I think about it. You can listen to her and like her journey of becoming a member of the church, growing up in Utah, not a member. I believe her mom was like an ex-member of a sort, and she eventually converted as an adult. And yeah, we've stayed in contact a lot. I went to her house over this summer. Actually, me and my wife and kids went out there and they fed us, and we just had a great conversation about the church, about faith crises, because that's something that she's expressed that she's gone through. And again, with her specifically, I'm kind of name dropping, I guess, and she's very proactive about this on her social media, so I think she'd be comfortable with it. And just what that kind of wrestle is with belief and the culture, the Utah culture, the LDS culture, and what that's like. And she's just been so understanding about me and my position and how I came to where I am today. It's just been a great experience chatting with her and talking about things. Another person was a former young men's leader of mine, actually, when I was growing up. As a teenager, he helped like coach church basketball for me. Just a great mentor figure in my life. And when he found out that I had stepped away, he was like, hey, let's go grab some dinner, you know? And so I've met with him several times over a meal. Just kind of talked about like life and how things are going and his views on things. I guess he's nuanced in some ways about specifically LGBTQ issues in the church, but still a firm believer. And he's expressed to me how some of his family members have left the church, and that he's just working on like what's more important to him is these relationships rather than the beliefs themselves. And I've just really appreciated every conversation I've had with him. As I'm going through this and I'm thinking about these people, the biggest thing I'm thinking about is just like an open mind and a listening ear. And those are, I think, the two biggest attributes you can have as a bridge builder is to have an open mind about things and have a listening ear. Not to say that you have to change your mind about things, but to recognize that there's other viewpoints, there's other ways, and maybe something I really strive for is like the, how would you say it? Like it's kind of a dogma in a way of like, I'm right and you're wrong, and I know that. I don't think that gets us very far. It's very, I think I shared this years ago when the podcast first started, but there's a quote by Brene Brown, she's a researcher on shame and kind of what that does to us as individuals, as society. And she has a quote that says like, I'm not trying to be right, I'm trying to get it right. And I really have resonated with that, because I would rather try to just live my life and get things right rather than just hold my ground and say, no matter what, I know what I believe is the truth and correct. Now, there's a way to kind of go about that, like I don't think that people have to drop that. You don't have to drop your beliefs in order to be a bridge builder. For instance, yeah, I'm trying to think of like an example of that specifically. I'll just use kind of myself, I guess. So for instance, like the church has a large monetary portfolio, and they use the money in certain ways, which I don't agree with for the most part. And that's a belief that I hold, but I'm also not dying on the hill that they're this evil corporation, that they are only using this money for their own good. They are greedy, so forth. It's nuance, right? This gray area is not easy to be in because a lot of people want you to just kind of like defend wholeheartedly the one side of it. But just recognizing that there's this degree of nuance in things, that two things are true at the same time. It's a big thing that I've kind of thought about as well. And applies to all kinds of aspects of my life, relationships, school. That two things can be true. I'm in pharmacy school, and there's medications that can really help lower your cholesterol, for instance. They're called statins. And they work. We know they work. They've been well studied. And one of the common side effects of this is muscle pains. And a lot of people will avoid taking the statin because of this side effect. And they may try one statin, they may try another, they may still have the muscle pains. There's like 5 or 6 different ones, right? And some people just refuse to take it. Now, the healthcare side of me says that, like, well, you should take this medication no matter what, right? Like, by lowering your cholesterol, you're preventing this risk of heart attack, of stroke, other complications that can arise from that. So it's so important for you to take this medication. Why would you not take it, But then also recognizing that these side effects aren't great to deal with, and they are painful and annoying and hard to get out of bed, hard to walk, whatever. And just kind of recognizing that these two things can be true, and the patient is going to make a choice about this for themselves that I would hope is informed. I want people to know what they're getting into, what the risks are. And they're going to make this choice that I'm either going to take this medication or I'm not. And it's not just like a one and all kind of deal. It's not a, as a clinician or soon to be clinician, I'm a student one, I guess you could say. In aspects, I want people to be healthy, and these medications can help. And also, I just want to be able to recognize that, sometimes it's hard. Same thing with like stopping smoking. We have medications that can help out with that, nicotine patches, gum, so forth. But some people just don't want to quit right now. And like, I know the risks of that. And they probably know them too. They probably had it drilled into them since they were kids that, the pictures of the black lungs and whatever, like these scare tactics that have been used in the past that aren't that helpful, by the way. They know the risks. They know what's going on. And sometimes people just don't want to change in that moment. And there's things that I can do to kind of help, to ask, to support. But it's kind of this constant battle. And this is the same thing with church and belief and so forth, that I can recognize the harm, but I can also recognize the good. And it's not so much of like, okay, where's the balance, where's the tipping point, and like, okay, if it's on the net is on the bad side, that means I've got to leave the church, I've got to be against it, so forth. I think for me personally, in general, I think of the church as a net positive for society. And yet that doesn't make me want to join it still. Like, I have my own reasons for that. But just recognizing that there is this nuance and this degree, because we get so caught up on the details and the nitty gritty, and not that we can't get caught up on those things, but all right, that's like the first step. All right, let's move on. Like, now what are we going to do about it? As an ex-member, I've gone through this roller coaster of emotions up and down, right? When I first started the podcast, I was still very much like, the church isn't true, but it's still good. And then I kind of got into this phase of like, the church is not true and it's not good. And I was kind of angry for a little while about things like that. And then I've kind of come to this spot where it's like, I think in general, the church does a lot of things right, does a lot of things wrong. For most people, like looking at society in general, and this applies to even just religion in general, I think religion is generally a net positive across the world. But it's also this balance of, well, okay, now what? Like, you join a church, you profess these beliefs. How does that affect you? Is it making you more loving and kind? Is it making you more judgy and more brush off, right? Like, what behaviors is it driving in you, and how can that affect those around you and you personally? And so, yeah, just walking this balance, this line. As I was going through my faith crisis, I went to a institute class by, the teacher was Jared Halverson. People may know him. He's in a sense, an apologist, kind of for the church. He works for BYU now, I believe. He teaches things. He got a PhD in anti-religious rhetoric. Very smart man. Anyway, I took a class of his called Navigating Trials of Faith as I was going through a trial of faith. And something that he always goes back to is this proving contraries, like that there's, for instance, how can God be all merciful but also all just? And he's like, you have to be somewhere in the middle on that, and it takes a lot of muscles to be able to flex and like stay balanced on this beam of these two opposing things. And that really rang true with me in a lot of ways. And I really appreciated that class and some of the things I learned in it. So good guy, Jared. So yeah, these other two people that I'm thinking about, they're more of like peers of mine. One served a mission with me. He was on my mission about at the same time, at least for a little while. And one day we sat down and had lunch and kind of talked about things, and he just shared about his experience with the church and how it was very stabilizing for him. Parents going through a divorce, I believe, and one of them was no longer believing in the church, but one of them was. And so kind of navigating this space of like, where do I fit in here? And do I want to go to church? How does that affect me? Just really opened my eyes to just somebody else's lived experience, right? I love hearing people's stories because stories are a way that we can connect, and we are able to recognize maybe certain patterns within that story that fit your personal experience. Stories of Lord of the Rings and stories of just movies and books. Like, we're a very story-driven society. And so it's really cool to sit down with someone and hear their story. And it also feels good to share your story with somebody else, right? So, again, that's kind of what I'm going for here with this podcast. I'll kind of wrap it up. I think I've kind of said most of what I want to say. I don't want to ramble too much. But yeah, just recognizing that there's nuance in things, that there's different points of view, that you may be wrong, I may be totally wrong. Perhaps the truth of the universe is that Joseph Smith did see God and Jesus Christ in a vision. He restored the one true church on earth. And in order to get back to Heavenly Father, I need to follow that path. That may be the truth of the universe. I don't know. Another truth of the universe could be Buddhism and following this eightfold path and getting out of this cycle through your karma, through enlightenment, and getting out of the reincarnation cycle to be enlightened and become a Buddha amongst yourself, kind of thing. Maybe that's true. I don't know. There's so many options out there, and I think for me personally, it's just hard to stick to just one. That's kind of where I'm in this space of I just don't know. I can't put my eggs into one basket necessarily, and I'm kind of a very evidence-driven person. I like to see what's the evidence behind claims, so that's more of why I land on the atheist side of things, because I just don't see evidence for God necessarily. But I still feel spiritual feelings, which is so interesting. I love these feelings that I feel. I've felt them here while I'm recording. I feel them at home when I connect with people. Maybe I just don't see them as a source of truth necessarily. They're telling me that what I'm participating in is the truth coming from God. Just based off of my own experiences, I don't see how that can work out necessarily. But I also recognize that other people, have had experiences that have told them that they are doing the right thing, and some things that may be an incredible coincidence or maybe from a divine being. I don't know. But yeah, I've just learned chatting with people that we are our experiences. I wouldn't be who I am today without the things that I've gone through. And I can't fault anyone else for being who they are based upon the experiences that they went through. Whether that's something very traumatic in their childhood or something very beautiful that they've experienced. So I fault no one for where they end up, I just love gathering this information and talking with people and getting to know them better, and how did you end up where you are, and how does that bring joy into your life? What parts about that are hard, are difficult? For me, being more atheist, sometimes it is hard to, I kind of get in this nihilism space of is there a point to stuff? I don't know. Is there a purpose in life, a grand capital P purpose? So I listen to a lot of different philosophers and Christians and Hindus on different podcasts and stuff like that talk about these things, and I just find it so interesting. So really grateful for the day and age where I can listen to all this information, and just happy to be one more voice among the many that can participate. So thanks for joining me today. Remember what I said at the beginning: like, subscribe, comment. If you feel like you're able to give a financial donation, I would appreciate that. And just send me an email. Let's chat a little bit. Okay? See you on the next one.